After she had recently lost a battle against her arch enemy, the Power Rangers, Scorpina was furious that she'd always lose against her arch nemesis, the Power Rangers. But there's one thing that she wants the most now. She wants to be able to defeat her enemy. But it wasn't that easy. She realized by doing it herself, she had no chance at all. Despite knowing she was willing to do anything to defeat her enemy, but she fails every single time. After about a few days after her recent defeat, she had been thinking about forming an alliance after she realized that the Power Rangers are a forcible and almost unstoppable force due to the fact they work together as a team. If there was only one of them, she had been able to defeat her enemy easily, but all of them together as one team makes almost impossible for her to be stopping them. So she wondered, would it be anything to being able to stop her by herself? And she had the answer for that already at least was no. She decided, what if she could find some other villain or another enemy to the Power Rangers to be as her team member or is some sort of allied? But who to ask? There was only one she could came up with, and that was Trakeena. Trakeena was another non-sword enemy to the Power Rangers, but she had no idea where to find her. She knew that she was still on Earth, but she was some sort of hiding. But after a while of searching, she managed to find her location, and even reached out to Trakeena, proposing forming alliance so that they would be able to stop their enemy for good. But though of course, there were a lot of discussions how to even to do so. But by combining both forces, they might have a chance of even defeat one or maybe two of their enemies, or maybe even all of them, despite knowing that they may not have the option for that. But they would do anything, anything to defeat their enemy. So Drakeena, she said that she could maybe provide a small army for them, for maybe up to like 50 soldiers in their disposal, in their arsenal for defeat the enemy. And after that, she managed to gather the army that needed. Then they all needed was a plan how to be able to defeat the enemy. They planned to lure the Power Rangers to outside of town and surrounded them by their army and, of course, some of Scorpina's minions in order to stop them from doing any form of, so that both Trakeena, Scorpina and Trakeena could stop them by using their might forces together. But even though in Scorpina's mind, despite having an army and some of her own minions, it was pointless battle. She already knew it, but she didn't even want to tell this to Trakeena, because if she did tell her, she might even break up this alliance and fight for against the Power Rangers on her own with the army. But even after they managed to trick the Power Rangers to even arrive to the area where they shoot them, the army surrounded the Power Rangers. And it seems that they were going to about to win, because during the battle, the soldiers actually managed to defeat at least one or maybe two of the Power Rangers, or at least making them occupied, so they would not be able to support their friends in other against the minions of Scorpina. But despite this, Scorpina still felt this plan, even if it seems to be working, it was going to fail. No matter what they do, it was just only a matter of time before this plan of them would fail. And just only a short moment later, it actually failed. The two other Power Rangers that they managed to separate from their friends managed to break free from the army and give out some backup to their friends and managed to defeat all of them. Trakeena's army was completely vaporized in their attack, and some of the minions of Scorpina managed also being vaporized before they all both, and some of her minions managed to escape. Both Scorpina and Trakeena were furious, but Trakeena was the most furious of all of them. How could they manage to lose when they had this possible strong plan to be defeat their enemies for once? Despite they managed to drag away two of the members. But then Scorpina did mention she had a feeling this wouldn't even work, despite all their planning. And Trakeena, she wasn't even really excited about that revealing those news. But afterwards she realized she had a point. They needed maybe a bigger army, Trakeena suggested. But Scorpina said, no matter how bigger the army you bring, it will always bring us to the bigger, bad end. And for that, Trakeena was furious, but this time on Scorpina. He stormed away from this supposed base of them, and she did even return for nearly a few more days later. But this time, she had a separate plan to do. She had managed to track down at least a large amount of military grade explosives and even weapons, like bazookas, even C4, or some other explosives that were strong enough to maybe destroy the enemy for once for all. And they tried to teach some of their that was left of Trakeena's army and of Scorpina's minions how to use the weapons and how to be using the explosives against their enemy. After nearly about a week of intense training, they felt they were ready. But there were even some part of Scorpina thought this won't work either. But what else did they have to do? They had nothing else to lose. So Scorpina and Trakeena did actually manage to trick the Power Rangers to arrive the same spot. But even though the Power Rangers are on high alert if something would end up in like a ambush or a trap, and their mind was right. The enemy surrounded them this time also again, but this time equipped with bazookas, rocket launchers, and even other type of machine guns or any type of weapons they came across with, including the C4 and other explosives. As the enemy tried to fire against the Power Rangers, the robot they was using together was merged as one. Seems to be working. Trakeena was about to admit to her victory against her enemy. But Scorpina said, you should wait with that admission that you've been winning. And she said, and why do you think that? Said Trakeena with a little bit angry tone. And Scorpina pointed to the dragon, the robot was actually attacking the army. They had already lost like 10 soldiers and 4 of Scorpina's minions. The plan they usually fought on to win was about to fail another time again. But this time, Trakeena had a secret weapon, which Scorpina was completely unaware of. And it turned out Trakeena have actually planned to pour out a large amount of tar, even gasoline and other liquid substance, and even including oil. And one of the fire soldiers throw some burning tissue or something burning item against the liquid, and it immediately turned to fire. Around that same time, when the enemy was surrounded by this enemy fire, they fired the remaining weapons they had, and even including explosives. And the ground beneath gave in. An entire Power Ranger robot fell down and was like gone, engulfed in fire. At that moment, Trakeena actually did believe they had finally defeated their enemy. She was cheering out. She was beyond happy that she managed to defeat her enemy. But even though the Scorpina was also was cheering about their defeat of their great enemy, but deep down she had a feeling they might have even survived. But she didn't want to be telling this to her. After they had left the area, they made sure to cover the entire hole with some more explosives to make sure that they were finally gone forever. And it took them nearly 2 days, for the Power Rangers to even get out. It turned out some of the robots suffered some damage, but they managed to repair it, at least some of it. And when this came out to Trakeena, she was furious beyond anything reasonable doubt. She had really believed that she managed to fight, at least defeat, her enemy. But this time, she had lost her mind. She was yelling over and over, how could they survive? Are they immortal or something? But Trakeena said, Scorpina, you should try stop fighting against them. You know it's almost impossible to defeat them. She said, I tried it for many times, and all plans have failed. Not even the universe's biggest army would not even defeat them. And Trakeena, she was silent. How dare you? How dare you even say that? I'm just saying that was what I believe, Trakeena. I know that you want to defeat them, and so will I. But no matter what we threw against them, they always walked it off. How do you expect us to be able to defeat them when they are still in their robots? You want draw them out from the robots so they can fight them in person to person. Maybe that would have worked. But as long as they are in their robots, it is impossible for us to even defeat them. You know that. Maybe it's best to just leave Earth and go back where you came from, and maybe take over that planet or something. And Trakeena. At first, she had no idea. She lifted her hand and pointed out, and lifted one finger, the index finger for exact, but didn't say the word. Trakeena realized that Scorpina had a point. As long as they inside the robot, they were nearly impossible for them to be even draw them out to be in defeat. Despite if they were separated the robot to one each robot, they would still be strong enough to be defeat one of them, or even both of them together. But somehow, being able to draw inside out from the robots and defeat them one by one could have worked. But it's unlikely they were able to just leave the robot to fight the enemy. So Trakeena decided to leave Earth permanently. It was not even worth again fighting this against an enemy they can't even defeat, despite all the face efforts they have been doing. Trakeena asked Scorpina what she will do if she's staying back on Earth or something. She said she will stay here because she has no other place to go. And then Trakeena offered to let her stay on her planet, which that Trakeena were actually a bit surprising that she did. At least Scorpina was really surprised that Trakeena invited her to stay on her own planet. But Trakeena, I will accept your offer. But when will we leave? She asked. Tomorrow morning. It's past noon. So both decided to leave Earth and never return, because despite the hatred for their enemy was not worth the point. It was not worth the time. Despite they were probably would bring back another big army, like an army of 1,000 soldiers, but it still would not be even enough. So they decided to leave Earth permanently. And when they came back to Trakeena's planet, Trakeena had learned that her father, Scorpius, had died, and that as only daughter Scorpius, she was the next in line to be inherited throne as a galactic tyrant, and she accepted, and she became the next queen, the next ruler of this empire, or what did she call it? And even though the Scorpina lived on the planet where Trakeena came from, she was still not much of any bother to do this. But after time, Trakeena actually offered her to be her cool rule, to be her co-ruler as her supposed called queen. That surprised Scorpina though, but she did accept it. She accepted I did this proposal for doing so, and they actually became some sort of married couple, ruling over an entire planet together. Even despite they had only been married for supposedly 4 years, Trakeena and Scorpina wanted to have an heir to the throne if something would happen. So they decided to adopt a boy, that which could be the next king, or at least the next galactic tyrant. After training their son from age 10 and onwards for nearly 8 years to be a fighter, a skilled fighter, and even leadership skills and everything he could need, they were really proud all the efforts and work for the son to work out. But despite all of this, but they were at least happy to have a son that one day would inherit the throne. And despite this, though, both Trakeena and Scorpina were really happy to have found at least someone they could trust and love, despite had different opinions in their fights against the Power Rangers. But they were actually very happy, though, to admit their feelings for each other, even to be queens of their own world. And this is how Trakeena and Scorpina from the true love got a son together. The end.